Hi, it's Neil here. Before we start today's show, I wanted to let you know that I've teamed up with my friends at HireEct this month. And HireEct is the first chat-based hiring app for startups. And what I love about HireEct is it takes everyone away from the dreaded email inbox and waiting around for responses. Think of it like WhatsApp for recruiting. And the HireEct app brings together recruiters and job seekers so they can directly connect with each other. And this allows recruiters and job seekers to communicate more and receive quick feedback. And the HireEct app also uses advanced technology to efficiently map job seekers and recruiters, all based on their preferences and behaviour. So you can improve your chances of reaching inbox zero, accelerate your hiring process 10 times faster than those traditional ways, all by chatting and interviewing candidates anytime, anywhere, on any device. So I invite you all to download the HireEct app for free from the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. That's HireEct, spelled H-I-R-E-C-T. Give it a try, let me know what you think. But on with today's show.
Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, we all kind of know that we're tracked on the web and inside our mobile apps because every click and swipe is recording information about our online activity. And then algorithms will give us more of what we like to keep us endlessly scrolling. But today, I want to explore the rise of email tracking. And on this podcast, we've had executives from Ghostery in the past, and we've discussed web tracking. But now I want to explore email tracking and how this major growing threat is something that most people don't know too much about. And I want to change that today. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to sunny Florida so we can speak with Pete Knowlton from Ghostery. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Pete. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
So my name is Pete Knowlton. I'm helping run Ghostery right now, and I've been working for the Little Blue Ghosts for 9 years now. I started as a support technician with a business analyst background, so I could write support tickets and specifications at the same time. And just as any startup goes, you have these roller coasters of different directions and different heights and different lows. And so I just kind of held on as long as I could, and here I am helping run the product in the future. So that's kind of where I am these days.
Love it. I've got to ask, can you share your origin story? Can you remember where your passion for all things tech came from and what it was that put you on this path with these blue ghosts?
Yeah. It's kind of a weird roadmap. I like to say, well, I don't like to say it, but I'm a failed rock star. I tried to be a musician and travel around the country and do that for a living, but that didn't work. And so I moved south. I'm in Florida, and this was all up in kind of the Washington, D.C. area, but moved down to Florida and got a temp job working for some, not really a tech oriented company, but I mean, everything these days is somewhat tech-oriented company, and migrated into a business analyst position where I helped, figure out how to make the system work better for not only the people inside the office, but everybody that uses the product. And then got kind of headhunted for a startup based out of New York that was starting a office in the Tallahassee area, just because one random guy worked with some random guy in New York and he needed help. And so, we started building out an office here. And so that was Right Media. We were built one of the first online ad exchanges that ultimately got purchased by Yahoo. And so I did that for about 5 or 6 years, and that kind of tanked a little bit from my involvement. And some of the folks that I worked with at Right Media jumped over and started this other company that ultimately purchased the Ghostery extension from David Cancel, who wrote it over a weekend. And I came over and started working with them. And the product itself, Ghostery was kind of a little bit of the redheaded stepchild of that company, but it was the most popular brand that we that was there really. And so I was actually the first person hired that solely worked on Ghostery, and it was our job to make it bigger, better, and just work across all different browsers. At that point, it was only a Firefox extension, and it only looked at tracking. It didn't really do anything. And so when we basically took the code base over, we made it work across all the different platforms and all the different browsers. And we decided to add the opportunity to block these trackers, because really that's why people were starting to use it more, as not only as an educational tool, but as an ad blocking and tracking and script blocking. So that's kind of where we are there. And then, people left. I took different jobs. I did marketing, I did QA, I did support, I did, email marketing, all sorts of different things. In a startup, you wear as many different hats as it'll fit on your head. And I was just like kind of learning. And so really that's ultimately how this all ended up, me working in a tech industry as a music major in college. I kind of fell into this seat. But it's actually interesting. The more and more people that I work with in the tech industry, there's a lot of musicians that are really good at tech. I think it's the kind of the out of the box thinking. It's seeing a problem and figuring out different ways to solve the problem. And so I've met a lot and worked with a lot of, I'm not going to call them failed, because we're all still playing. It's just we're not at Madison Square Garden. But there's definitely a link there. So that's how I ended up in technology. It was a one weird left turn, and I didn't want to live in a van with 8 other guys for the rest of my life.
And of course, tech is the new rock and roll, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's good to be a tech star these days.
Now, I have spoken with Jeremy Tillman on here several years ago, but for anyone that has missed our previous conversations, can you just set the scene and give the listeners a bit of an overview of how web tracking and now email tracking is a major growing threat that many people don't know enough about, really?
Yeah. So, every web page you view, there's going to be some sort of technology on there for the person that owns that web page, that they want some sort of information as to who you are, why you're there, what you're looking at, basically as much demographic information that they can grab. And so ultimately it's to put the right advertisement in front of the right set of eyeballs at the right time. And that's generally what's happening. And so it's no longer just, oh, I see an ad on the web page. It's invisible 1x1 pixels. They're tracking scripts that fire on the page that you have no idea about. And that's kind of like our bread and butter right there. So it's collecting. You don't even really know what they're collecting. Some ads, if you click on it, then that takes you to another page. And, that's some logical, step by step that you can follow. But the invisible stuff, that's the creepy thing that we all try to, shine a light on and say we pull back the invisible web. And, sometimes their job is to just say, this is where this person came from, or this person is using, the Firefox browser in Chicago, and they're, using Comcast, like all the big product words that people want to know where they're at. And also dropping cookies so that next time you show up there, they know all about you. And there's a version of this where it's saying it's making a more tailored web experience for you, so that when you go to a web page, they know a little bit about you and they can serve you a more relevant ad. And so it really is it's a user decision. Do you care that people are collecting data about you to make some websites show information that you care about? And if you do care about that, then you need to start doing some research to see, well, what options do I have out there? And the movement of email tracking, it's not really a new thing. It's just that we need to start taking care of all access points of who we are on the web. Our digital footprint is really our most valuable commodity these days. So in email, as soon as I open an email, there are triggers in there. There's those invisible scripts again that are showing that even the easiest thing is this email opened. That I know that that person read that email, and so that's a tracking script. There's no other way to get around that. But there's also advertisements embedded in some emails. If you're using, and again, this is all if you're using we're kind of going at it from the aspect of using a web browser. So you're using Gmail or using Hotmail, if you're still there, any of those web-based clients is really where we're looking at. If it's local, then you need to kind of count on a local, like a local tracker, a blocker from at the network level, but we're still looking at it from a web-based. So the email stuff is starting. There's more and more trackers being introduced to the web every day. And so we're really going to start looking into that more to provide more opportunities for research so you can kind of see what's happening embedded inside your own personal emails.
And I suspect for the most part, a lot of people listening will know about being tracked on the web, but not so much so with emails. So I've got to ask, who's running these email trackers?
Yeah, so it's so that you kind of have to take a step back and just kind of understand the email marketing. There are the big names, and I don't mean to call anybody out, but for anybody who's knows about this, it's no secret. You have HubSpot, MailChimp, SurveyMonkey, SendGrid, all these kind of email marketing platforms. And it's really a company will subscribe to this platform. They'll make all their nice fancy emails and they'll do a mass deploy to everybody on their email list. Well, once you get that email, there's tracking embedded in those emails so that they know that you even receive the email, that you open the email. And then if you click on whatever service or advertisement that they're pushing through, the new web address will have a really long string. It's called a UTM parameter that will then show information back to the company saying, okay, this person came to my website, or whatever the action is that they are trying to get you to do in the email. But it'll actually say, well, it came from this email. So that way they can kind of have a better idea of how well their campaigns are working. Did people not respond to one version of text versus the other? There's a laundry list of things that they do. And so these platforms supply a lot of that lower level technology information that most companies, you're not going to build out an email marketing platform. You're going to go to some of the big guys there. So a lot of these are through there. And then some of them, if you're using, the almighty Google Gmail, they have their own trackers in there too. And so they run certain things through their own tracking services so that you actually have to go to them and find out the information. But that's a whole nother telltale to go through. But that's basically who it is. It's email marketing platform campaign owners and various other recipes of tracking.
And on this subject, just to bring it all to life, do you have a user case or an example possibly that you could share with listeners just to help them understand how this is probably happening to them every day, but without their knowledge, just to bring it to life?
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day. I'm like many people, a member of a gym, and when you sign up for a gym membership, they ask for every piece of contact information you could ever give, and your email address is basically your calling card, and they send you promotions through the mail, and they're trying to get you to upgrade your membership, or do online courses, or get a trainer in there. So you get an email. You click on that email. As soon as I opened it, a tracking script fired back to said gym, and it basically said, okay, Pete opened up the email, but he didn't do anything about it. So maybe that's some sort of demographic information that they'll say, okay, we sent him one email, one open, no conversion, meaning I didn't do anything about it. So then I get put onto another list that, okay, I'm going to get another email in another week. And so they'll just keep changing and adding people to these different lists based off of the ratio of me opening versus me clicking, so there's a strategy there. But like if I clicked on that email, and then I clicked on the request of sign up with a trainer today, and I clicked on that, and then I actually signed up, I probably wouldn't get another email for a little while based off of those campaign results. So I'm sure people see that kind of stuff all the time. Like any sort of offer from a company that you've signed up for, or you want to receive a newsletter, like, you go to buy a t-shirt somewhere and it said, and you're going through the checkout and it says, check here to receive your newsletter and updates on product features and sales. You're being added to a list inside of an email campaign setup, whatever you want to call it there. And then you're on this massive list that you'll always get emailed. And then, but the ratio of you clicking on that link versus not, you start to see a difference in how many emails you get based off of that.
Wow. The big question, of course, is how do you stop email tracking, but without degrading the email experience? Because there are a lot of solutions out there, but very often if you go for that, if you do that, it comes at a cost and you lose a bit of the email experience. What's the secret in getting the right balance?
Yeah, I mean, again, like I kind of say that online privacy and security, it's such a personal preference that it's hard to throw out like the perfect recipe. Like, again, some people just don't care and some people care a lot. But what you need to be comfortable with is, what's the comfortable experience that you want to get. If you completely block all these trackers in your emails, then you may not get a certain familiarity with whatever product or company you're dealing with. So using a tracking blocker is probably the easiest thing to do there. VPN doesn't block tracking. It just blocks, other stuff. So if you're using some more privacy centric email platforms, so like obviously using things like Gmail and Hotmail and Yahoo Mail, you're signing up for a free product. So if the product is free, you're the product, so like you have to be comfortable with providing something of you in order to get this free product. And so you just need to do research and find some of those. There's hey.com it's a privacy centric email. And so it's just finding the right email service that fits your comfortability with tracking in general.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was reading that Google is soon to roll out their Manifest v3 API, which is a new structure for their coding, which will prevent a lot of privacy tools like those from Ghostery from working anymore. So how can users avoid leaving their data unprotected? And is there anything you can comment on around that new Manifest?
Yeah, and actually we just got an update that Manifest that Google's postponed the rollout until January of 2023, which gives everybody a little bit more time to figure out what they want to do. Yeah. I'm not a developer. I mean, I've taken coding classes but I couldn't code myself out of a box at gunpoint. So the lower level concepts of Manifest v3, are a little above my head, but from what I know is it basically changes the way that we can actually see the web requests coming in. And then it removes the ability for extensions to modify those requests versus the browser now having all the control. And so if you think of it that way, if you're using Google Chrome, you're using anything else, that it's up to the browser now. It doesn't matter what extensions you have. It's that they're going to do what they need to do. And so it does change the game for us a little bit, because the way that, speaking, selfishly just about Ghostery right now, because that's just what I know, but it completely changes how the product works from day one. So we're working on doing some fancy footwork to figure out how we can still exist in this space with an application that no longer functions the way it does, and ultimately, making some Ghostery users a little upset because their product changed. Well, we had to adapt, so hopefully you have to adapt too. We've come up with another option. We created our own browser. It's a fork off the Firefox browser, but Ghostery Dawn is a complete privacy-centric browser now that has Ghostery built in. It has our insights tool built in, but most importantly, it has Ghostery the way that we want it to work and the way it always has worked. And so when we talk about what can people do, again, it unfortunately goes back to what level are you comfortable with? Because if you're okay with how things are and you're not really concerned about data tracking, then Manifest v3 really doesn't matter to you. But if it's something important and something that you rely on a daily basis for tracking and blocking ads and all the good stuff that Ghostery has done in the past, you need to start coming up with a plan B, which is, again, why we created Ghostery Dawn, because we hope we are your plan B, to come over to us and keep browsing the web fast and secure in the way you want it. But it's going to happen. There's lots of stuff is going to change when V3 rolls out. But again, thankfully, we've got another 2 years to really hone in and provide a better service.
And of course, Google also promised to slowly end the use of third-party cookies, which is intended to look like a privacy-friendly decision. Again, it has been delayed, I believe. But can you tell me more about that and how actually it's not all it's cracked up to be, and it could actually strengthen the impact of their own first-party trackers?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like playing Monopoly, right? It's third-party tracking is gone, so you have to. Well, it's like, we're all out here playing dodgeball with our own ball, and then Google says, well, you can't use any of those. You have to use ours. and then if you want any of the points that were scored off of this ball, we'll give you access to it. So it's kind of like them slowly but surely monopolizing tracking cookies using on their O&O. So it's going to be interesting. I don't really know how it's going to play out. I think a lot of, the Manifest v3 changes and then the third-party tracking changes are really going to, I think, intertwine with one another with the different extensions, trying to figure out how to make everything work. But the email tracking, I mentioned before that Gmail, if you're looking in Gmail, you're really only going to see one tracker in there, and that's the Gmail trackers, because they have everything routed through that one single super tracker. And then you have to get the data from them and then move forward. It's going to be something similar to that. So it's another way that they're kind of keeping their ball and playing their own game as well.
And finally, just to give people listening at home and a business leader possibly listening a takeaway from our conversation, can you expand on how they can protect their data when working from home and how businesses can more actively block trackers and improve their page too? Yeah, absolutely. The whole work from home thing kind of exploded over the past year and a half, I think. The biggest issue is keeping your Wi-Fi secure, having strong internet access passwords. I can't emphasize that enough. If you're doing your work from a local coffee shop, make sure you switch on a VPN that allows for a little bit more anonymity while you're out there. But, unsecured wireless access points are, playgrounds for people that know what they're doing. And so if you're working in a potentially, delicate area, whatever you work in, you want to make sure that you keep that stuff safe and secure, especially if you're transmitting data in and out through any means. A tracking and script blocker for when you're, researching things on the web is always great. We like to provide, we have Ghostery Insights, which is baked into Dawn, but is also an extension there. It gives you real-time tracking data analysis, which can also help. And it also notifies you of unsecure third-party tags. So a lot of those big nasty data breaches a few years ago, the Target one is the big one, but the access point was through an unsecured third-party script. So there's some alerting and things you can do there, but just really having a better idea of the ecosystem of what's possible and what type of applications you can use for alerting of anything that's kind of out of the ordinary. And then just kind of good smarts, don't click on things that are random, just don't go clicking on every single thing there, especially if you're using, an office laptop or, a company owned gear. You need to kind of
hold yourself back a little bit if you get a little trigger happy on some things. You want to make sure that you know exactly what you're clicking on. Don't reply to emails that you don't know the people. I forget what I would call it, but it was just, good internet smarts. Phishing scams are crazy and all that. So probably what I would suggest.
Well, I love chatting with you today. We began our conversation talking about your origin story, but it's now time to have a little bit of fun with you and ask you, what was the soundtrack to that origin story? You are a frustrated musician, so we've got to get. I'm sure there's a lot of tunes out there that you enjoy playing. But is there one particular song that keeps coming back to you that reminds you of your career in tech and what got you here?
Wow, that's I did something similar. It's like a top 5 desert, you could only bring 5 records. What are they? And you have to listen to them for the rest of your life. Thinking about this, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna go old school and heavy. So Ozzy Osbourne, his album, The Ultimate Sin, the last track off of that album is called Shot in the Dark. And I think that pretty much sums my life up, to be honest with you. Just going for it, giving it a shot. If it doesn't work, change something, and move along. The album version is pretty good. Jake E. Lee's playing guitar in there, but I have to say my favorite, Just Say Ozzy, is the live album with Zakk Wylde. That's a little bit more true to how I feel about some of the stuff that I do. It's a little bit more raw and angry, and I'm sure Ozzy yells something profane right before they start, so you may want to not be careful with the speakers when you listen to that one. But you gotta, you just got to go for it. And so a lot of these tech startups, I mean, you could be kicking yourself if you didn't try it, And so anybody out there that's debating on whether or not they should, push that app to the app store or come up with a new idea, I mean, you got to try it. It was the same thing with the Rockstar thing. I had to try it, set a little bit of a time frame on it, so you're not just sitting there 20 years later being like, it's almost gonna happen. It may not happen, but just be smart about it. But Ozzy's Shot in the Dark, I'm gonna go with that one.
You had me old school and heavy. I'll be adding that to the playlist.
That's a great record. Yeah, well, all of it is good, but I specifically went with that.
Love it. And before I let you go, though, for anyone wanting to find out more information about Ghostery, what you do, contact your team, etc., what's the best starting point?
Yeah, we're actually about to release a brand new snazzy looking website. So ghostery.com is obviously your best access point for everything new and blue. And then we're, at Ghostery on Twitter, and you can reach right out to me at pete@ghostery.com. I read everything, and if anybody has issues, support at Ghostery. But that all comes to all of us. So we all take turns looking at everything, and our support team is great. And we love chatting with anybody. And so if you have new ideas, or you found a new tracker, or you found a page that's broken, we take it all. So have at it.
Love it. Well, I'll add those links to the show notes so people can find you guys nice and easy.
Great.
Like I said at the very beginning, a lot of people are familiar with web tracking and the usage of third-party cookies, etc. But email tracking, probably not so much. So it's great to hear about that, how that people can improve that. But more than anything, thank you for coming on and sharing your story. So keep on rocking in the free world, my friend. We'll speak again soon.
Great. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
So email trackers are basically little bits of hidden code within emails that collect personal information about you. And depending on the tracker, which is often run by third parties not associated with whoever sent that email, can then collect everything from your name, email address, and IP address of your computer, not to mention your location and device usage. But you can stop email tracking by toggling off HTML emails in your email platform, or by using webmail and a tracker blocker, like something that Ghostery offers. But I cannot thank Pete enough for talking about email tracking, how it works, who runs email trackers, and how to prevent them from collecting your data in a language that everyone can understand. That's what I always try and achieve with every episode on here, and give everybody a takeaway of how they can make things a little bit better. But as always, let me know your experience, insights, opinions about any form of tracking, whether it be web tracking, email tracking, or GPS tracking, anything in between too. So email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. Keep your messages and questions and pictures to come on the show coming over, and I will get back to you straight away. But right now, it's time for this aging podcaster to put his feet up and prepare for tomorrow's interview too. No rest for the wicked. So a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.